I grew up in rural Wisconsin on a property my parents had owned since before I was born. It was a modest single-story farmhouse surrounded by cornfields and patches of forest. We had a big backyard where my dog used to run, an old red barn that my dad used for tools, and behind that, an ancient wooden shed that was basically falling apart. That shed was always a little creepy. It had no lights inside, the door hung crooked on rusty hinges, and every time the wind blew hard enough, the latch would rattle. My dad used it for storing scrap lumber and old garden equipment no one really needed. Even in broad daylight, I didn't like going in there. It smelled like mildew and wet earth, and you could hear mice skittering in the walls. My parents always joked about tearing it down, but never did. It was one of those "we'll get to it next year" projects. I was 16 the first time they ever left me alone overnight. My mom was nervous about it, but I convinced her I'd be fine. They were going up north to visit my grandmother for the weekend. It was a 5-hour drive, so they planned to stay Saturday and Sunday, coming home Monday morning. I was thrilled. I invited a friend over for the first night and we played Xbox, ate junk food, and watched horror movies. Around midnight, he left because his parents didn't want him staying over. That night was totally normal. It's the second night that haunts me. My parents had texted me during the day to check in. I told them I was fine. I spent the afternoon doing homework and watching TV, enjoying the quiet. Around 11 p.m., I got ready for bed. I brushed my teeth, made sure all the doors were locked, turned off the living room light, and went to my bedroom. I remember lying in bed scrolling through my phone, chatting with my friend about nothing important. Memes, girls from school, homework. The house was dead silent except for the wind outside. We lived far enough from town that there were no car noises or neighbors yelling. Around 1 a.m., I heard something outside. It was faint, but unmistakable. A metallic clank, like something hitting metal. I paused mid-text and listened hard. It didn't repeat immediately. I almost brushed it off as the wind hitting the barn roof. Then it came again. Clank. I recognized that sound instantly. It was the latch on the old shed. My stomach dropped. I remember telling myself it was probably just the wind. The shed door was flimsy. It had blown open before. But then I heard another noise. A dragging sound on the dirt. I froze. My room was completely dark except for the dim light from my phone. I turned it off and sat up in bed, trying not to breathe too loudly. For a moment, all I could hear was the wind sliding through the trees. And then I heard it again, slow, dragging, like someone was pulling something heavy through the dirt toward the house. I felt my skin crawl. I remember thinking I had to be imagining it, that it couldn't be real. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could and crept to my window. I didn't want to move the curtain too much, just enough to peek outside. Our backyard was dark, but there was a bright full moon that night. It lit up everything in this pale, silvery glow. I could see the shed clearly. The door was wide open, hanging crooked. My eyes scanned the yard, and that's when I saw a man was standing in the doorway of the shed. He was facing the house, facing me. He didn't move at all. He didn't even shift his weight. He just stood there like he was waiting. I felt like my heart stopped. I remember actually dropping the curtain and stumbling backward, hitting my dresser. The noise wasn't loud, but in the silence it felt like a gunshot. I couldn't see him anymore, but I knew he'd seen my window move. I dropped to the floor. I didn't know what to do. My parents' room was across the hall. I thought about running there and hiding. Instead, I crawled to the door and gently turned the lock. My bedroom door didn't have a real deadbolt, just one of those cheap push-button locks you can pop open with a paperclip. Not much comfort. I sat there on the floor for what felt like forever. I didn't dare look out the window again. Then I heard footsteps on the gravel path leading to the porch. I remember counting the steps, trying to guess how close he was. Then they stopped. I held my breath. Suddenly the front doorknob rattled. He was trying it, not pounding or banging, just testing it carefully. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I pulled out my phone and called 911. My fingers were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. When the operator answered, I whispered into the mic. She kept telling me to speak up, but I was terrified he'd hear me. I said there was someone outside my house, that he tried to get in. She asked if I was alone. I told her yes. She said to stay on the line. I heard nothing from the door. But then there was a new sound. The back gate squeaked. He was going around the house. The operator told me to lock myself in a room. I told her I was in my bedroom, but the lock was cheap. She said to barricade the door. I remember grabbing my desk chair and wedging it under the knob. It was all I could think of. I sat in the corner of my room with the phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding so hard it hurt. At one point I heard tapping on the living room window. Just 2 soft taps. like he was testing to see if anyone would respond. I bit down on my fist to keep from making a noise. The dispatcher told me officers were on their way, but it would take about 20 minutes. That was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Every creak of the house made me jump. I was convinced he was inside, but eventually I saw the flashing of red and blue lights through my window. I heard voices outside. I started crying so hard I couldn't even speak to the dispatcher. She told me it was okay, that the officers were there. They knocked on the door and I didn't want to open it at first. I made them show me their badges through the window. When I finally opened the door, I collapsed. They walked the property and found the back gate open, with fresh boot prints in the dirt. They shined flashlights into the woods, but he was gone. They never found him. My parents drove back that night after I called them, getting home around 5 a.m. My mom cried and hugged me for a long time. My dad was furious. He walked the property himself with a rifle at dawn. After that night, he installed floodlights with motion sensors all around the house. He put new locks on all the doors and windows, including my bedroom. He nailed the shed door shut and we never opened it again. I never felt safe in that house after that. We moved 2 years later when my dad got a new job in Madison. I'm 27 now, living in a small apartment in the city. I've got good locks, a dog that barks at everything, and security cameras on my door. But I still don't sleep well. Some nights, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear a metal latch clanking somewhere outside. And I remember that silhouette in the shed doorway, standing perfectly still, just watching me. I'll never forget it for as long as I live.